now record in the morning. I greet you here from the sacred land of the Chochenyo Karkin Ohlone people. I'm Madeline Cronenberg.
And I'm Consuelo Lara.
And this is Between Two Teachers. And this week we're going to talk about what's going on. This is our, as we were just saying, week number 6. And we've completed week number 6.
We've finished week 6. So it's been 42 or so days we've been in shelter in place. Yep.
That's right. And our kids have been out of school.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's been an incredible effort on the part of all children everywhere in the United States, actually, except for there are these rare little spots that have continued on, but they're very rare, very few and far between. More than 99% have been out of school. And so that's the big news in education, is that we have been doing distance learning. And I do want to just mention that the American Federation of Teachers has come up with the big conversation now is, how do we go back? And all the many things we have to consider in our district, in every district, about how they're going to return. Like in New York City, where I am from, they are now, for the first time in over 100 years since the subway system has been in place, they're closing it every day to give it a sanitary washdown. It's unheard of. The subway system has always been a 24-hour operation. And one of the reasons is because when people are going to go back and when children are going to go back, they ride the train. And the train cannot be a place where they're going to get sick. Right here, it's going to be the same thing. We need to look at how we handle our buses. Everybody's going to have to figure out how they handle, public transportation and so many other things. So on the list today, I've put a link to a plan to safely reopen America's schools and communities. And it's a 22-page plan written by the American Federation for Teachers. And I commend it to everybody to take a look at it because they've really thought through the issues. And included in that, I think one of the most important things was that it's important for parents and teachers and community members and students to be part of the solution, to be at the table and part of the solution in figuring out how you're going to bring people back into the classroom and what that will look like. If you're going to have smaller classes, when you have a lot less money, it's hard to believe you're going to have smaller classes. So it's going to be a complicated set of decisions that have to be made in order to decide how students are going to come back and when students are going to come back, right?
Yeah. I like the idea that it's not saying we are going to come back on this date. It's saying we're going to come back when we have these things in place. And that's the important thing to note. That's good. So it's a place to start,
Yeah.
Place to start.
And what is happening is that the distance learning adventure that everybody is on, they are getting better at it, right? People are getting better at it. And however, the big issue is across America, the digital divide got exposed. If there was ever any doubt about the digital divide, that doubt is gone, right? And even in the charter schools, I mean, I've been receiving the newsletters from our local charter schools saying how few Chromebooks, they had not been a one-to-one as an operation. We were ahead of them. We were way ahead of them on that. And so they didn't have equipment for their kids, right? They also don't necessarily have the same feeding set up. Like, the idea that you can go and pick up your meals, although their kids, any kids here, we don't check what school you go to when we're giving out our food, right? We're giving out like over 20,000 meals a day. It's, we just got a joke. We just got a joke. Well, we'll use it. We'll use it at the end. He always has the best joke. He has a school bill there.
Okay.
As coming in, the joke came in as we're recording. Anyhow, I think that it's a really important thing, and we'll be talking about this every week now, and to see what how things do roll out, because our governor, as of today, what we do know is that the governor has said that he thought school was going to start in July.
He got a lot of pushback on that.
He did. He did, because he was doing a very top-down thing when he said that. I think he was talking about his family. He really wanted to, but
yes,
because
yes.
he's
got 4 kids. He's got 4 kids at home, so maybe that was he wants them to go to school.
He's ready for them to go to school, and maybe they will. But he can't just do it unilaterally. The idea is if he wants this to work, especially in schools, the other rules that he makes, he can make, because that's up to him. When he wants to close a beach, or that is his job, and that's his responsibility. But schools are much more complicated.
Absolutely.
Much more complicated, right? And you're starting to look at all these issues. So anyway, what I found to be the most complete plan so far that I've looked at is the one from AFT. So I have everything on this Trello page that you can link to. And instead of putting it somewhere else, I'm just linking over there, and then you can see everything I talk about is, and that you talk about, we both talk about, is linked on there, including that. The other thing that they did talk about a little bit was the grading. And you've talked about grading now in West Contra Costa, right? The many choices that are out there for grading, just like everything else.
Right.
And you
the
can,
credit,
so what's
no credit,
yeah.
pass fail. Yeah. At this point.
Or A through D. Or A through F.
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be any letter grade at all. So, and it goes back to that divide you were talking about. Some people can't even log on. Some people, are taking care of the kids while the parents are maybe doing things, or, all kinds of things. Or
somebody is sick. They have somebody in the family that's not well, right?
Yeah. So how can you really give a letter grade? You can't. So yeah, that continues. But it also says they're giving out caps and gowns to seniors that they're going to do. So
and what are they going to do with those caps and gowns?
They said schools are figuring virtual graduations, possibly.
Yeah.
So it's all it's all in the works. It's all in the works what they're going to do next. So okay. Anything else on your?
Oh, let me see what else. Oh, I was just going to mention a couple of things. There is a case in Detroit. This is just a national thing. Detroit students have the right to an education, a federal appeals court has ruled, and so they have a right to literacy. And we've had a case like this in California before, but we'll see what happens with this one, right? This has now gone forward and got litigated this week. And I'll link to that as well. But it's an interesting case, and a lot of people are looking at it, because it would mean that there would have to be state and federal money, much more than we have so far, to allow the children to actually exercise that right and achieve literacy. And the other national thing is from a superintendent on Long Island who wants an education revolution. And I think, this goes along with all kinds of things. And mainly it has to do with agency for students and agency for families. And the quote that he had in there that I thought was the most in his article, and I've got his article on this list, is from John Dewey. And he said, "If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow."
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
And I think that's really what we have to, this is really the break from how we were teaching, right? Nobody's teaching the way they taught in January.
Nope.
Right? And so it is a total change. And the other two things are that the distance learning world is there very much. And there's all kinds of opportunities for people to look at many different webinars that are giving people instructions on how to do it. And I think there's an opportunity for family members to understand how really critical and how much work it takes, right? It's one of these things where people who think, oh, well, you should be able to do all your 5 hours of teaching every day, just get online and do it, overlook everything about how it works. and what it takes to set up a video platform and what it takes to set up a video lesson and whether or not how many kids you're going to have in at one time and how you're going to give feedback. All of those things are part of having a degree in distance learning.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And people seem to think, oh, well, the computer's going to replace the teacher. The teacher now is going to do it all online. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. Nothing is going to replace the highly qualified teacher and that relationship with those students. We're going to add this other stuff in and put it where it belongs.
That's right.
Teaching is going to stay highly qualified in our
and this
schools.
Should prove to people how much you need to be highly qualified, right? Now you have a new set of things you have to learn and be qualified in. Mm-hmm. Actually, I mean, that's what it's coming down to. True. So there's all of that out there. And I actually watched a couple of videos on this week just to see what they were doing. And while I was doing that, the other thing that came up is Mr. Thurmond was all over national TV. He was on CNN, he was on MSNBC, and he was talking about exactly this because he had started up the task force to address the digital divide in California. And California is a leader in how they're going to do this now.
Yeah. Right.
And part of it is that the biggest part is they're asking philanthropy and corporations to donate. Right, and they have. Google's come up, and Apple's come up, and the ISPs, the communications companies, are coming up with the hotspots for Wi-Fi. But I mean, so that's one way to do it. Another way is for a community to do it the way we did it and pass your own bond to be able to take ownership over what you need
for the infrastructure. Absolutely, yeah, expanding that
and for the equipment. Right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And to just build it into your budget. Because we've had our $3 million sitting in the budget to keep replacing older Chromebooks. Yeah. And that's right, that's there. That's sitting there. And anyway, it's the one thing he never talks about, because then you're talking about another tax and people don't want to talk about it. Right. Unless somebody wants to run a tax measure. But that's the way that works the best, rather than having to go as a charity. Yep. And then the other thing I did want to talk about Oakland. And Oakland next week is going to be discussing changing the voting age to 16. And it's just to vote for school board, because they don't have any authority beyond that. But they are going to look at whether or not you can be 16 years old and vote for school board, which has been done in other places, and in this case is supported by our state senator Nancy Skinner. It's supported by Mr. Bonta, who's the assembly member from Oakland. It's supported by a great number of the Oakland City Council and the Oakland School Board members. So I'm really curious to see whether or not that happens in Oakland.
Yes, yes. And that's going to be, when are they voting on that?
I think on Wednesday.
On Wednesday. Wow. That's going to be something. I hope they do. I hope they do vote. It would be something special and something very powerful for our students.
It really will. I mean, that you want to talk about empowering students. This is how you get empowered. You get to vote for who's on the school board.
Oh, gosh. Wonderful. Okay, we'll look out for that. And in our school board.
And now for our school board. Go ahead.
So we had a special meeting about Manzanita Charter School, a little school that has been in the district for 20 years, has about 120 kids. And it actually, our district has 72% or their free and reduced lunch. That school has 75% free and reduced lunch kids. So it was really, serves a real special population, high need, a lot of English learners, etc. But the board, the other members of the board voted to close it, to not renew. And it was very sad and very unfair, in my opinion. It was very unfair.
So it was a 4-1 vote, right?
It was a 4-1 vote, yeah. And of course, they've got a chance to appeal. They can go to the county, etc. So we're going to be doing that. Looking at just following that and see, but it was a very odd kind of situation. And they actually went against the recommendation of the staff of, the findings. So
Yeah.
bizarre. I don't know what happened, but it's too bad. It's too bad that
Well,
happened.
then you had to have a second meeting, right? You had 2 meetings.
That's true. That's true. We did. And same outcome, and parents came, and there were just a lot of things that were wrong with that. But yeah, it's just too bad. But Manzanita is a really great school, and they do a lot of great work with very high need students. And yeah. So hopefully they'll, be able to stay open and go to the county for that. And speaking of Oakland again, last time we were here, we had a guest, Mike Hutchison.
We had a whole separate, episode.
And I just wanted to, I went and listened to it again, and I wanted to highlight some of the takeaways. And all of these just have to do with Oakland, okay? So this is some of the things, and specifically we had asked him to talk about Go Public. And Go Public started over there in Oakland, in fact. And around the time that he had run for school board, he lost. And then he found out later that in the election, Go Public had put in a lot of money, $500,000 or something like that, to oppose him and support their own candidate, and had a lot of influence in that. And these are things that he stated, that Go works basically as a slush fund for supporting candidates. And there's also related kind of organizations. In Oakland, Go Public is also connected to the Ed Fund, and pretty closely. And that Ed Fund is used as a physical sponsor whenever donations come into Oakland, that they go into the Oakland Ed Fund. So there's that relationship.
Right.
And that will go as a PAC, and they'll support a candidate. The goal of Go is to control the Oakland Public School book. And they've actually controlled it, I couldn't believe this, for 8 years now. And I thought, well, no wonder they have so many charter schools there. And he said the model is the AstroTurf model, where it's a fake grassroots, where they pretend to be a membership organization, but in fact, when they put forth policy, it doesn't come from membership. It comes from the leadership. So the leadership is telling everybody, we're grassroots, we speak for the people, we speak for and it's not true in Oakland. And Go pretends that they're neutral when it comes to charter schools, but of course they're not. We know, in fact, we have some proof of who is funding Go, which we'll talk about at another time, but I really wanted to specify what's going on there so people understand that. I think he said Ed Fund contracts with Oakland Public Schools and gives $4 million a year. So has contracts with them up to, 4 years, and that they're the physical sponsor. I think I said that. And that they suggested that the PTA should give their money to the Ed Fund so that they could be in control of those contracted dollars, and PTA was not going for it. They said
no, PTA. Not a
and
PTA
he
thing.
had to say, Go is very good at what they do. They go into the community, they get local leaders, they give them jobs, and
they give them jobs.
They give them jobs, and they're going to say they're going to lift up this leadership and promote them. And all it is to promote their agenda, not the agenda of the community or of those leaders. So his recommendation also is, what he's done to kind of shift it. He said actually Go is weakening over in Oakland, which I thought was interesting. He said bringing the policies to the light of day, and going to the meetings and exposing what it is they're saying, and really because a lot of it just doesn't stand up. And to see that Go does not represent the community. They just represent themselves. And I like this when he talked about the colonial model, you know, and you come in and colonize a group, you take the leaders and you convert them to your agenda, and they then colonize everybody else. And so, you know, saying that in Oakland, Go is a colonizer, really.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just some very good information. Those were the takeaways that I took. And again, this is all what's happening in Oakland when it comes to Go. And I think that's information that we should all know. So
I think he was very complete. It was a very complete interview with him, or discussion with him. I put the contact information, his background, also on the page where I have all the resources. So if you want to go back and look at the Mike Hutchinson interview, you can look at the resources that he refers to. And the thing about Go is that it has a strategy behind it, and it's, if you're looking at, you know, who's aligned with who, one of the things about public education, the thing that has been something that reduces the ability for public education for district schools to continue to give great education has been the loss of funding to charter schools. It just flat out has been. And Go didn't take some sort of leadership around trying to save that money for Oakland. They were silent. They were just totally silent. And so that's a big problem. And it just speaks to where they were coming from. And the whole thing about they wanted to do a unified enrollment form, and what that would do would put both the district schools and the charter schools on the same platform, so folks wouldn't know the difference between them. And it is a reasonable thing. There's some people don't care, and I understand that, but to put them both on the same platform hides the fact that there's a difference between them. And that's not a fair thing, I don't think.
And is that called the portfolio model? Isn't that what they call it? Yeah. Yeah. So if you hear that,
it's just a portfolio. All schools are the same in our portfolio. And nobody has a local school that they go to. Everybody, it's the New Orleans model, right? But New Orleans doesn't have any district schools left, so it doesn't matter. They are all charter schools.
They are.
So
they're all
anyway, it was a really interesting discussion, and there's still more to talk about it in terms of where they've how they grew to where they are, and how they got the influence that they have. Right. That's sort of what we've talked about.
Great. It's great to analyze it. What happened in Oakland is really helps us see what's going on in that area.
Because honestly, they themselves on their own website talk about how they want to, and they have grown over here to West Contra Costa. They've also grown to Fresno, and they are interested in growing further to any location that has funders that will help them, that they can be in alignment with.
And has high need students.
And high need students.
So there's a racial aspect to their, their
there
intent.
is. Right. There is.
Okay. Very good.
So that's our story in Oakland. And we want to thank Mike for coming. That was really, really a wonderful opportunity to get into the depths of what's going on in Oakland.
Great.
The other thing, what was this? Oh, California. There are two calls to action. One is from the Network for Public Education, and that's to tell Congress not to let the charter schools take the money from the recovery effort, from the coronavirus recovery effort. And so there's a letter campaign for that. And there's also one to keep our elections safe and simple on voting. And I think that's a really important thing for November, because this is all getting so very complicated and scary. Things can be underwritten and undermined So anyway, I'll have both of those on here under take action, and anybody who's interested can sign up and do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Because I believe a couple, there was one of our charter schools has applied and received a couple $1 million, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, that's very important to speak up about
so
that.
yeah, exactly. And so there is something we can do. We can write letters to our legislators and say, we don't think this is a good idea. They should have been excluded.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
They shouldn't be getting state ADA and getting and applying for this when the district schools are not allowed to apply.
Yeah. Double dipping.
Yeah. Yeah. It's double dipping. All right. You know, it's great. It's their great idea. And the other thing I did want to mention was the adult ed folks have done there's been a webinar done on their behalf. And also they have our adult ed community has put out a document on remote learning via students' mobile phones. Because adult ed students, many of their students are English language learners. They don't have any kind of a screen, and they don't necessarily have children in the district. So that because then they would have a tablet or a Chromebook. Right. They're a person who's enrolled in a class to learn English. So how do their teachers communicate with them? They do it all by phone.
That's what I see that.
Right. And so they have, anyway, so for anybody who's interested in knowing, I mean, this just shows you the level of complexity of this situation.
For all of this, there's so many changes. Oh my goodness.
Right.
And do you have anything else?
No.
Anything else? Okay. So speaking of changes, and always wanting to have some bold alternative plans in the works. Here's one. There's a movement. We just started it.
We're joining it. It already exists. It
already exists. I know. To end standardized testing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research around the negative effects for both students and for teachers. Yep. And the fact that there's nothing positive about it. Nothing comes out of it. It's not accurate. It doesn't help teachers be better teachers. There's really nothing that it does for anybody except maybe the publishers of the, of the tests.
People in the testing industry, it does something for them because it's their industry, right? But it's been built up to be completely disconnected from what our children need to learn. Right? Yeah. I mean, I believe in the DMV test. I think there you do need a test.
Yes.
I think you need to rethink every test that you give and say, where is it on the standard of the DMV test gets 100%, but what other tests are going to get 100%? Right? And that's, I think, what how we need to look at it, as opposed to other ways to evaluate growth, education and growth. In our classrooms.
And there's so many wonderful, creative, and much more accurate ways of assessment and evaluation that are just amazing. So we want to be on the forefront of that.
And this is the moment, right? This is the moment.
This is it.
If there was ever a moment to do this, right? It's just like with the charter schools. We had reached a moment where that was the appropriate time. Everybody was ready for 1505 and the changes that had to be made around charter schools. And that was done at that moment. We've been now delivered another moment, and this is it. People have given up for the first time. They're not taking the tests. And people are seeing there are other ways, right? Everybody is doing stuff another way. And I think that's really what we have to, drive forward. Why would you go back to this other way of doing it?
I know. So we'll bring more information. We'll do more research. There's a lot of research out around this.
There's a lot, and we'll look at everything that can be done to help move this forward in California, right? So that California teachers and community members and PTA leaders have really sit down and have this conversation. Because you don't have to just go back, like Dewey said. You don't have to go back to your old ways, right? Yeah. And it looks like it's going to be impossible to go back to them anyway.
I know. Everything's going to be different. We can't even imagine yet.
No, we have no. I mean, this list of possible things. So among all of those, the thing you don't have to hold on to is the test.
Yeah,
right? You just
sure.
don't have to hold on to it. You don't have to hold on to the same textbooks. The colleges have already given up the SAT. You don't have to hold on to it.
And
right?
isn't there states that don't buy published curriculum? They do other things that are much, less expensive. And so there's all kinds of creative things we could do differently with this time. So we'll bring some of those ideas.
Absolutely.
Are we ready for our joke?
We're ready for this
today?
incredible joke that has been sent in by the ever wonderful Carlos. What?
Okay.
Have you got it in front of you?
I got it. Yeah. Do you want to do it or you want me?
No, I don't have it in front of me, CJ.
Oh, okay. Why was the broom late for school?
I don't know, Consuelo. Why was the broom late for school?
It overswept.
There we are. Okay, till next time.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.